Hey, howdy, hey, PonZiTV fans, it's Freydo from PonZiTV, and as you know, it's Halloween. That time of year where everything just gets a little bit creepier. Our video games are no exception, so today we're going to be looking at The Evil Within. A little bit about this game. Originally, I wasn't so interested in picking up this title. To me, it just looked like a third-person shooter with a little bit of jump scares thrown in. But I noticed that it was written and directed by the guy that was behind the Resident Evil series, Shinji Mikami. So my interest was piqued a little bit after hearing that. So that being said, how does The Evil Within stand up to the legacy that is easily one of horror gaming's biggest franchises, maybe just short of Silent Hill? Really? Not that bad. The game itself reminded me of a mix of Devil May Cry's world, which is kind of creepy and atmospheric, but not outright scary, with a mix of The Last of Us game mechanics like the shooting, the stealth, some minor crafting elements, all wrapped up in the plot of the movie Inception. Which all sounds pretty cool, right? Well, it has its faults. Off the bat, when I started up the game, it crashed my computer. And I had the recommended specs to run the game optimally, according to Steam anyway. Also, I have a dual monitor setup, and it defaulted the game view to my secondary monitor rather than my primary monitor, which was weird. Easily fixed, but still weird. So all technical issues aside, getting into the game, it starts off with a view of the three main characters. Detective Sebastian Castellanos, who you play as, and his two partners, Kidman and Joseph. They're en route to Beacon Mental Hospital to investigate reports of multiple homicide. After some brief dialogue, control switches over to the player. Upon this, I realized the one thing that would kill me more than any monster in this game will. How close the camera is to your character. I cannot stress this enough. It's supposedly a third-person perspective game, but the camera is so close to the character it might as well as be in first person. Also, I had to bump up the sensitivity of my mouse a little bit because the controls for the camera felt a little stiff. But other than that, the game controls just fine. The game doesn't hesitate with starting to set the mood, but this scene which summarizes what you can expect out of the 15 to 16 hours this campaign has to offer. I mean, the atmosphere in this room is amazing. You can almost smell how bad the bodies piling in the corners and hanging from the ceilings have to reek. But unfortunately, the excitement stops there for the next 2 to 3 almost full chapters as the game slows to a painfully slow crawl in an effort to reveal plot exposition. But the plot is so convoluted and obscure, and the characters are so thin and vapid that you hardly even care what's going on. Although I can say, from the end of Chapter 4 and up, the pacing improves greatly, balancing between moments of intense gunplay and thematic atmospheric horror elements. This game also manages to make leveling up itself creepy. At the start of the second chapter, you wake up in a cell block, only to be escorted to a large empty room save for a chair in the center. You are told to sit in this chair, and when you do, the device locks you in and turns into what looks like an abstract electric chair. Then the menu pops up. The level up process itself is done in a similar fashion to Devil May Cry. Whereas Devil May Cry used red orbs as a currency to buy skills and augmentations for your character, this game uses green jelly. Green jelly is not only found off the corpses of defeated enemies, it is also found as a collectible item scattered throughout the world, which makes it a highly sought after item short behind ammunition and health supplies. This game also has some very fun and unique boss fights, which remind me sort of like the olden days where boss fights had their own sort of mini puzzle to them. There was a special way in order to take them out. My favorite example of this being the Keeper. This guy, who can be defeated more easily by trapping him in his own traps. The ending of this game was fun, but still a little disappointing. It was easy and consisted mostly of quick time events, not so much an actual fight. It was cool in the fact that it was very cinematic, but it didn't necessarily feel like you had an impact on how the boss fight was actually going to turn out. That being said, this was one of my favorite parts of the whole game. The ending cinematic, not so much. There's no real closure to the plot, and in fact it leaves more questions than it does answers. This could indicate a sequel, but the thing that worries me is that 2 DLC have been confirmed for this title already. Which more content is awesome, but if $20, possibly $40 and only 4 to maybe 6 hours of extra gameplay is going to be the only way I'm going to get closure for that ending, no thank you. Personally, I think this is a huge dick move to the people who have paid full retail price expecting at the very least a fully fleshed out story. Nevertheless, I did enjoy this game. It's very atmospheric and creepy, downright scary at times. The gunplay is nice. Although the camera might be a little bit too close, the story might be a little too confusing, and the characters might be a little too one-dimensional. But it was still a fun experience. I'm going to give this game a, drumroll please, 7 out of 10, and the Freydo seal of approval. Alright guys, that does it for this episode. Don't touch that clicker unless it's to subscribe, and stay tuned in for more PonZiTV. This is Freydo, signing off.